we contend that some of those signals that we send right now are resulting in our best minds not going and doing some of this really amazing work that we need them to do.
Making government attractive to a new generation of wicked smart people is the key to solving big problems, even if they never end up working in government. That is the core prescription offered by Arun Gupta in his new manifesto, Venture Meets Mission. We'll meet him on this episode of The Future in Context. I'm Paul Taylor. Ashley Silver is on assignment. And we've got a guest co-host from just down the hall. All of that coming up.
TFIC takes you deeper into the stories that are shaping the future of state and local government.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
You're not Buzz Lightyear.
I'm Siri.
And I'm Google.
And I am Alexa.
Alexa seems so smart. I think we'd have a lot to talk about.
Pew, pew. Venture Meets Mission. We'd wear t-shirts with that emblazoned on them around here. But it's also the name of a book. Carl Smith from Governing has read that book and talked to the author. Set this up for us, Carl. What is the big idea in its 280 pages?
The big idea here is that government and technology need to be working together. Increasingly, young people want careers with purpose. At the same time, government faces challenges that are so huge that it's really important for them to have every bit of the technology skill that exists to solve those problems. So the author of this book would like to see those two working together more, providing purpose for young workers and providing government with the best in available technology.
The book to me was a way to kind of raise some of these issues of saying we have it amongst ourselves in this country. The two bastions of optimism and innovation are really on our entrepreneurial ecosystem and our college campuses and our academic community.
So let's meet one of the co-authors who you had the chance to interview. Who is Arun Gupta and how did he get to that intersection of government, finance, and technology?
Well, Arun Gupta is a very successful venture capitalist. He's also worked with government, consulting on government problems. He started a nonprofit foundation to help young people find careers in government. And he's actively involved in every piece of that, from the technology side, from the government side, and from the education side.
How do we harness that and tie that to solve and collaborate with government to solve these big problems? And that, to me, was the inspiration of the book, the voice of seeing how these students were struggling with trying to figure out, how to do this. When I saw how they were reacting in the class, many of them rescinding their banking consulting offers to go into this world of mission and venture. We really started thinking about, how do you scale this message beyond that?
Scale. That's a classic venture capital fixation. But you asked him about whether government can scale anything if it doesn't have what it needs, including people, to do its job.
Yes, government has big challenges that can be resolved to a large extent with better and better technology, but there are two things that go together. They don't have the workforce that they need to really implement technology at scale, and then they actually don't have the technology either. So they need both a bigger and younger workforce that's familiar with working at the cutting edge of all this. And then they need, either through more grants, through partnerships with the private sector, whatever it takes, to have the same kind of technology that is powering the companies that are leading the technology sector.
Look, I think increasingly, not just government, but, all organizations are becoming more dependent on technology to do their jobs more efficiently and more competitively. And I think that holds true with our government as well. One of the stats we talk about in the book is less than 7% of tech workers in government are under the age of 30. And we have 4 times as many over the age of 60. And, if you look at the average age of a Google or, it's probably mid 30s. So we're upside down, right? In that, as you look out at these geopolitical conflicts that we're currently in, but you also look at, a conflict like climate, these are more technological based conflicts where we're dependent on technology to help us resolve these and in a more and more dependent way. And so, to your point, I think, it's become essential And then you look at the emergence of something like AI, and the executive order that was passed, and how we use that, has really big implications of how we can become more efficient. Again, a lot of people talk about the dangers of AI, but there's also a lot of really positive, if not more positive things, of how it can impact and create more efficiency and allow our workers to do more. And so I think that's why we think it's important, and why we're in an important place and time right now to try to harness that energy. What we need, or I think this roots back before you even get to government and business, into the academic community, and how we train our students. We need to kind of help students embrace kind of this idea of a nonlinear career. Currently, we send them down a silo which says, all right, either you're going to be public sector or private sector, or you're going to either do for profit or not for profit, and we make them feel like there's a binary decision to be made there. And it's especially true on the tech side and the business side, primarily because, look, there's no real faculty members in many of these institutions that are engineering or business that have spent time in government before. So there's no one advising these students to think about like spending some time in government as part of their career. It doesn't need to be their career. This is about kind of weaving a tapestry of what your career can look like. And so I think it really even starts there in my mind, right? And our academic institutions have a role to play in this, and how we create these interdisciplinary opportunities for them. Once you get into government and once you get into the tech sector, if one is thinking that way, you can see a world, and this is what we're trying to do with our foundation at Noble Reach, where people may have started their career in government for 2 years in a Teach for America kind of fellowship, but then they've now gone to Amazon and Google, but they're going there with a sensitivity around how government operates. And so the R&D doesn't need to be something, a one-time spend. It needs to be a training of people that have experiential and fluency in how the other system operates. What I've found, in moving around from, having been in the government family and having been in the venture side and then the academic side, is that you just realize like your real value is just being a translator.
So each sector at the intersection of venture and mission is to be a translator in the global innovation game. What is Gupta's argument where competition and attracting the next generation of talent of public servants is concerned?
He makes a really interesting point that there shouldn't be a contrast between a life of service and a life in the private sector. And he really underscores that people working in government, even as part of their career, will have experiences they could never have in the business sector. They bring them back to the business sector, and they're better employees for the business sector. Some of them might decide to stay forever. They might like the work or purpose that government wants. But if they don't and go back to business, then they have a whole other understanding of how government works and how they can interface with it and support it.
My career was pretty much in the venture capital community. So I'd been around the optimism and the power of entrepreneurship. And in my latter half of my career there at Columbia Capital, was spending time also investing at the intersection of mission, tech, and entrepreneurship. So saw the challenges of collaborating with government in that capacity, but also saw the magic when it worked. And then the final leg of the stool really was after I, had my venture career, was started to teach at Georgetown and was teaching at Stanford. And I think that, informed me on like this, how this new generation is really thinking about things, right? And I think how also their views have changed post COVID, post Ukraine, with a climate, adversary out there, along with geopolitical adversaries, that there was a growing desire of this generation to want to do mission oriented stuff. And so having seen the government side, having been on the venture side, it really was the inspiring of creating a class first, which we called Valley Meets Mission, which I was teaching at Stanford. And it was really to inspire the Stanford students not to go do Candy Crush 3.0, but use that entrepreneurial talent to go solve meaningful problems. And to solve the biggest of those problems requires some collaboration with government.
Not to pick winners and losers, but Gupta does tip his hand on where he thinks the most fruitful space may be in this multi-sector collaborative environment. Were you surprised by his answer?
No, Gupta is starting with the federal government to sort of lay out a playing field, perhaps, but State government is a whole different ballgame. First of all, he places a lot of emphasis on how important the education system is going to be to all this. And state government is much more poised to quickly put together quite K-12 curriculum or community college curriculum or university curriculum that intertwines these factors that he's talking about. And then beyond that, states are just much more agile. They can respond faster. They can put programs in place a little faster. It's generally understood in a lot of ways that the real engine of change in government is state government.
But the vision over time would be to do just that, right? Where you would have a federal level program, but then state level programs. And I actually think the more interesting work, or equally interesting work, I should say, is at the state level, because of the impact you can have and the responsibility you can get. And how do we harness that? And also, I think you can create a very a stronger, more vibrant ecosystem of private sector academic institutions at that state level.
There are no small number of books that offer a vision of innovating and transforming society. In fact, those words are in the subtitle of Venture Meets Mission. But he doesn't sound like a big bang kind of guy. Seems to appreciate that society and government that serves it is more likely to get there with an iterative or incremental approach.
Well, I think one of the things that is interesting and powerful, really, about Gupta is he's a venture capitalist. Venture capitalists take ideas across what is sometimes called the valley of death, the application. And he knows what that takes. He knows that's hard. He knows it doesn't happen all at once. So he's got a big idea about where we're heading, but he also has experience with taking ideas across that difficult terrain and making them become common practice.
If we're going to do two things right as a country, we need to get better talent and better innovation around government. And the thesis we put out there is that the infrastructure that we currently have to connect that talent and that innovation, along with the scaffolding to support it when they are in government, is needs to be modernized and needs to be updated. And so as a result, we have a foundation now called Noble Reach Foundation. We have about close to $500 million endowment, and that's what we're looking to go do. We're looking to help create and modernize the infrastructure to both recruit and bring in top tech and business talent into government, from college campuses, in providing the scaffolding to succeed when they go into government for 1 or 2 year experiences. We say, for example, government sells careers, the students are buying experiences. Government sells jobs, and the students are buying mission. And so what we're trying to do is, break down the notion of saying, look, this isn't about you needing to come in and commit to a 30-year career in government, but we think this is, you starting here, much like you wanting to start a Teach for America, is a great place for you to start your career. It's a great place for you to learn and, get to see some cutting edge things, being around, problem sets that are complex and difficult, but also not be left alone in that process and creating a much more cohort based model whereby you'll be getting a mentor, you'll be having, critical hard, functional lessons, while you're in the program, which could be taught by our private sector partners. And then also creating a boot camp and, quarterly kind of meetups so that you're creating social bonds, with the idea that these are your peeps that have a shared view, a shared value system, that then you go embark on your 25, 30-year career journey together. Right. And some of you may end up in government and as, an undersecretary of a department or an agency. Some of you may end up in, Wall Street. Some may end up as entrepreneurs. Some may end up at a tech firm. Some may end up as deans of academic institutions. But the beauty of it is that when that happens, that you have the shared experience that hopefully allows you to draw on trust and a community to be building from. And so the long game we're playing there is like, this is how we rebuild trust. In the near term game we're playing is, how do we harness the energy that at least I feel when I'm interacting with college students that are looking for a more purposeful way to kind of, put their talents to work, how we can kind of create those bridges and help facilitate those opportunities.
His idea of collaborative innovation certainly doesn't let government off the hook. In fact, he ratchets up on government to do, as he says, double down as domestic demand and global competition grows. You've had some time to think about the interview and what he said, and of course, what's in the book. What do you think the key takeaways are for the people who are making government work?
Going back to the basic idea that government and the private sector are intertwined, probably in many, many things, but let's just take technology. Let's take the example of AI. If government had known more about what industry was doing with AI when it exploded onto the scene, maybe we could have responded better with less upset, with less confusion. And that's just one example of the kind of thing that is going to be coming down the road. So, on the one hand, being aware of what's going on in the private sector that you might end up needing to regulate, private sector understanding better what government considers to be its domain, and then the mutual needs for workforce in both. How much time is the private sector losing because they didn't consult with government in advance about AI, and now they're having to work out how is this all going to move forward with your permission?
In today's day and age, as we talk about AI, a lot of focus is put on the algorithms, but when you think about really what influences and the behavior of those algorithms, it's really the data. And so the proprietary or the data that government has, on people, on interactions, on incidents, at a local state level, whether it be on, across different domains in health and transportation, et cetera, is unlike any other data set. And so how you use those data sets, to be able to bring more efficiency to existing services that are provided, but potentially, enable services that you and I aren't even thinking about today, that would have been either too expensive or too laborious to try to provide. But in a world that we're in today, having that data, we could create new services to increase the user experience, for lack of a better way of thinking about it, with how our citizens engage with government, which goes, may feel like a small thing, but it goes a long way to helping rebuild trust.
The problems that exist in the world today are very complex, and they really rely on data for their solution and being able to analyze and manipulate data in the same way that Amazon knows what kind of shoe that I like.
God, it feels like it should be possible.
If government doesn't have those skills, it's not going to be able to keep up with the complex problems that it faces now. At the same time, there are more and more young people who want jobs that have purpose. So let's give them jobs with purpose, bringing their skills to these complex problems. That'll help the business community, that'll help government, and maybe most importantly of all, it'll help communities throughout the country.
Carl Smith, a senior writer with Governing. The editorial and production team behind The Future in Context includes Aragon Idem, Zoe Manzanati, Kaylee Tedrow, and Kate Albrecht. Our executive editor is Noel Nell. Our editor-in-chief is Kathleen Robinette. And that will do it for us this time around. Ashley will be back next time. And for Ashley Silver, I'm Paul Taylor. Thanks for listening. Stay in touch with the show at tfic.tech.